Here is the Suzuki service manual for the DR-Z4S and 4SM. I just received this today. It is March 25th. So I realize that the title is kind of misleading. I don't know why it's labeled as a DR-Z400S and SM manual, but it truly is for the DR-Z4S and SM, the 2025 model that's fuel injected. So if we scroll through some of the pages, it's obvious that it's for the new model. So here's the great big instrument cluster. Here we can see the new style exhaust, new design on the side cover, different arrangement, different design on the exhaust heat shield. That's just one example. So I'm going to go through this manual and do as many videos as I can, particularly anything that people might be interested in knowing. So the first thing that I'm going to show is the service intervals. So we'll switch over here to page 0B-2. Air cleaner element. Well, everybody that rides a DR-Z 400 or 4S off-road is going to check the condition of the air cleaner a lot more frequently than what this specification says. 600 miles, nothing. Don't need to inspect it until 3,750 miles. Well, by that point in time, I would have probably cleaned my air filter 5 or 6 times at least, the way I currently ride my DR-Z 400. Next thing, valve clearance. First inspection or first check of the valve clearance is not until 24,000 kilometers or 15,000 miles. Spark plugs replace at 7,500 miles or 12,000 kilometers, and then again at 24 and 15,000. Next thing that's important, oil change. First oil change, break-in, 600 miles, and then 3,750, 7,500, 11,250, and then again at 15,000. These are the mileages here on the second line, kilometers are on the first line. I ride my DR-Z 400 that I currently have in pretty severe conditions. It's almost always off pavement, lots of dust. I generally don't go more than about 1,000 miles between oil changes because I'm doing a lot of slow riding. That may seem a little bit excessive, but my current DR-Z has 22,000 trouble-free miles on it. Next up of importance, well, oil filter. I always change the oil filter at the same time that I change the oil. Although this shows spacing out the oil filter change intervals, that's not something I would do. I would always change the filter and the oil together. Coolant, 12,000 kilometers, 7,500 miles, and then again at 24,000 kilometers, 15,000 miles. None of this other stuff is really terribly important. It's just things like radiator hose, throttle cable play, clutch cable play, drive chain, brakes, brake hoses, brake fluid, all of that kind of good stuff. So the next thing we're going to look at is the gear ratio. So there's been a lot of speculation from people that have read the information that Suzuki has published on the DR-Z4S and 4SM, as well as looking at the colored engine diagram that shows basically a parts breakdown on an exploded view. All of the different changes to the engine parts are listed in yellow. Well, everybody see, or I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people see all of the gears, the transmission gears, shown in yellow, and they read between the lines and assume that because the gears changed, that the gear ratios have changed. And then also there's a block of text, I'll throw that up on the screen here, on Suzuki's website, talking about what changes were made to the engine and transmission. And they read between the lines there too, and conclude that the gear ratios have changed based on what they are interpreting that wording to mean, and they're completely misinterpreting that wording. So right here I have a page that I printed out of the DR-Z400, 400S, and SM owner's manual. Right here we have the gear ratios. Primary reduction 2.96, first gear 2.25, second 1.733, third is 1.375, fourth 1.090, and fifth gear, slight overdrive, is 0.863. And here we have final drive or final reduction ratio 2.933. Basically that's your final drive ratio. These numbers here represent the sprocket size, 14 or 4415. That's what has been stock on the DR-Z400S since time began, when the first model rolled off the assembly line back in 1999 for the 2000 model year. So let's flip over here to the gearing page. So let's flip over here to where the gearing specification is. I need to move the manual just a little bit to get it centered. So right here, 2.96, 2.285, 1.733, 1.375 for third, 1.090 for fourth, 0.863 for fifth gear. Guess what? That's the same numbers. Here we are side by side. The only thing that did change is the final drive ratio. And I noticed this quite some time ago when I made another video. It's called the Deep Dive Discussion on the DR-Z4S and SM. I'll have a link down in the description below to that video, and also up in the upper right corner of the screen. So the gearing on the S model has changed to a 43-tooth rear sprocket, same front sprocket of 15. And the SM model, I believe that's the same gear ratio, 41-15, or commonly called 15-41, 15-43. Generally, when you talk about sprocket ratios, you mention the smaller number first, the countershaft sprocket. So there we have it, my first quick look through the service manual. I'm going to be going through this quite a bit and making some more follow-up videos describing other various things about the DR-Z4S and 4SM. If you've got any questions on things you'd like me to look up and cover in future videos, drop those down in the comments below. Anyway, thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can get notified on future videos that I do on this service manual and DR-Z4S in general. I do have one on order that I have mentioned numerous times in other videos. I'm just patiently waiting for it to arrive.